Welcome to this part 2 video of New Eagle's Raptor dev. This one's a follow-up video on the prior tutorial on how to make a short, simple display in under 20 minutes. This one is an extra edition, and we'll cover how to add another screen to that and change some units. In the most simplest of terms, we're going to take what we made on the last model and put another screen on it. This screen's going to be able to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit for us. Now that's small but useful in many applications. So as you can see on the screen, we have our configuration screen. This is what we're going to create in a couple easy steps using Raptor dev. As you can see, I have the Celsius and the Fahrenheit, and then buttons 4 and 5 just switch between it. So we'll keep referencing the simulator throughout so we know what we're building, and this is what we should have at the end of this video. Keep in mind I'm using Raptor version 2015A and MATLAB version 2014B. First off, we're going to start by creating the configuration screen. Here I'm just going to drag over the splash screen just because it's all set up for us, rename it to config, and then what we need to do is head into the update function of it and clear out everything that's in there because we want a blank canvas for what we're about to do. First we need to start off with a ground, just so our ports are nice and grounded, and here we're going to bring it in from the Simulink library browser. Now what we're going to proceed to is getting the text and the rectangle set up for the title of the page. So here we need the clear screen first, which clears the screen before anything can get written to the screen. So when we're switching between screens, nothing will stay on it from the last screen. So that one always needs to be drawn first. Here's the draw text block, and we need a draw rectangle. So we're gonna drag that in, and this is gonna set up the menu as I've said. So we're gonna have configuration and then a box around it. Here I'm gonna drag in the coordinates for all these. So the first thing we need to do is drag in a constant and make sure it is of type int32, otherwise we're gonna have a build error. So set the first one you have to int32 and then make copies directly from that one using right click and drag, and then that will ensure that they're all int32. And here I'm going to connect them all up, and what I'm going to do is display the coordinates on the screen and skip ahead. Now that the coordinates are all set up, we're going to set up the text and rectangle blocks. Here we're going to have a configuration where that's going to be our text for our title. I'm going to set that to FCC0, which is a nice orange color. You can pick whichever color you'd like. Here we're going to have a size of 30 and use the microstyle extended bold text for the title. Rectangle is going to also be of the same color as a dotted shape, so that's just going to act as a border around the text for the title. We're going to transition over here to making the temperature text. We're going to need to drag in a Raptor text block, and we're going to name that temperature. So first we need to grab that block. We need 3 of those blocks for what we're going to do, so make 2 more copies of those and line those all up. We're going to make those into a subsystem shortly, so we'll give you the shortcut on how to do that. First we're going to want to do the coordinates for this. So again, I'll display the coordinates on screen, but you want to drag them from the ones we've already made, so we have them as type int32. That just saves us having a build error later. These text blocks are going to contain the first word being temperature, and the second 2 are going to be C and F for Celsius and Fahrenheit. Here's where we're going to put that information. Open up the first block and put in temperature. Make sure it is the color you desire. We're going to use the same orange throughout this whole screen, FCC0, and then we're going to make sure it's of size 20, and I'm going to use future font for this one. I'm going to use that for temperature C and F, and then we're going to do that for the next 2 text blocks. When we create the C and F blocks, we're going to make sure that it's right and top alignment instead of left and top, because the temperature is going to be on the left side of the screen and C and F options are going to be on the right hand side of the screen, so we want to make sure that they're aligned appropriately for when we set up the coordinates in the next subsystem that I'll show you. Now we're moving on to the subsystem. We're going to create that, so select the 3 text blocks and everything with those, and right click and press the create subsystem from selection option. Here we have our subsystems, everything's in there now. I'm going to move it over towards the draw rectangle. I'm going to make it orange just to keep with the theme, and then name it to temp text. The benefit of naming it is you can access it quickly from the left menu. You see the drop down menu, we can access it quickly other than finding subsystem 1, 2. We can have temp text and we can go straight to it. Open that up, and here what we're going to do is add some functionality to it. So right now it's just text, but we want it to actually change between Fahrenheit and Celsius. Here we're going to use those Raptor data blocks that we used for the CAN status screen. So we're going to need a data store and a data read, where I'm going to name those temp units, but you can name it whatever you like other than status, because I believe we use status for the CAN status screen. Now we're going to transition to switching between the Celsius and the Fahrenheit functions. We're going to do this by using an if statement, so we need an if block. So go down to the if block and drag that in. It's a little ways down here. There it is. So we're going to drag that in, and what we're going to do is connect that up to the data read, and then from there get a if action subsystem and connect that up to the if and else ports. We don't need the in and out because we're not going to use build order for these subsystems. They're just going to draw on their own. So, and that's fine for what we're going to set up here. So get rid of those and then make a copy of this one, because we're going to need two. Just like this. There we go. From here we're going to set up the line that I'm going to use to switch between C and F visually. You can use an arrow as an image, you can use a circle to select whichever one it's around, but I'm just going to underline each letter that is active. So if Celsius is active, we're going to have a line under it. If not, Fahrenheit's going to be underlined. By this, what we need to do is get a clear rectangle. I'm going to use a clear rectangle by having the rectangle underneath both C and F, so it clears it no matter where the line is. So in both subsystems we're going to have this clear rectangle. So that's the first thing we need to put. As always, the coordinates need to be int32, and what I'm going to do is put them on the screen again so you can see them a bit better. Now we have all our coordinates hooked up to the clear rectangle. We're gonna want to draw a line now. So since we're in the left subsystem, what we're gonna want to do is have the left line. So bring in a draw line block. It's a Raptor block, and what we're gonna want to do is hook up the coordinates to that. So I'll display them on the screen. I'm gonna keep with my color theme, make it orange, and hook those up there just like any other block, and then that's our line for this. We're going to bring in a terminator, put that on the end, and we're going to call this subsystem good because it's finished. And when we put that on the end, what we want to do is select all that and copy it, because we're going to put it in the next subsystem and just change the coordinates because it's exactly what we want. So take this and copy it, and we're going to go back up to the next level up. Make sure to name these if you want, because it's a lot easier to navigate to them if they're named if you're using the left hand drop down menu. But I'm just going to name the left one C line for Celsius line and Fahrenheit on the right. So we're going to go into Fahrenheit and paste what we just made from the Celsius block, and then that's here. The clear rectangle is going to be exactly the same because it stretches over both letters, and that's fine. We're going to leave that. So we just need to change the coordinates on the line so it's underneath the F instead of the C. So I'm going to put the coordinates on the screen for you, and with that block then we're done. Next, a couple things I just noticed real quick that we need to change before we continue. I'd like to have this text be 20. I have it kept as 10, which is default, but we have everything else as 20, so change F to 20. And now what we need to do is switch the C line and F line there backwards. You need to put the else to the if and the if to the else. So switch those over like so. Head into the if block and make sure that it's U1 equals 0, not greater than 0. So that'll work there. So now head over back into the subsystems of C line and F line and make sure that the Y coordinates are 91 and 91 instead of 91 and 92. If they're 91 and 92, they'll be at a slant. So we want to have it 91 and 91, so it's a flat line. Now we're gonna head up a level and we're gonna finish off with a terminator. So we're gonna put a terminator at the end after the orange subsystem we have there for the temp text, and our update function for the configuration screen is complete. Now we're gonna move on to buttons so we can actually navigate to this screen. If you notice, the create background that we have is for the splash screen still, and we want something that actually has buttons on it, so we're gonna copy the one from the full screen and replace it. So here we have is what we set up in the first tutorial. What we want to do with it is change it up so we can use it for our screen. We want buttons 1 and 4 and 5 to be used, and 2 and 3 are not going to be used. So we can have buttons 2 and 3 be ported with the default images that you see there, and button 1 is going to have a left arrow, and buttons 4 and 5 are going to have the temperature gauges. So I'm going to skip ahead and let you see the final result of this. As you can see here, what we have is a temperature icons for both pressed and not pressed going into buttons 4 and 5 in the bottom right hand corner. I just used a port image for those just because there's 2 images to keep it clear, and number 1 has a backwards left arrow going towards the configuration screen, and then that is how I have all the buttons set up. So you can pause it here and have a look and make sure that all your buttons line up also. And we're going to move on now to the next part, which is going to be setting up making the temperature buttons work. To do that, we're going to navigate back to screens, so go up a level and then over to the button handler for the config screen. Here we have button 1. You're going to want to open that up and change it to quad screen. So here it is as quad screen right now. And now we need 2 more of these. Let's copy that over and then copy it again for buttons 4 and buttons 5. So within the subsystem of buttons 4 and 5, we're going to need a constant, a data conversion, and a data write block. So here's our data conversion. We're going to need to go to get our data write and our constant. So for this is the same way as we have the can status screen. In the can status screen button handlers, we also have the write a constant to the data writes, which then hence changes the disable and enable function on the screen visually and using the can messages by enabling or disabling the can block. So this is the same setup. We're going to want to use temp units, or whatever you named your temp units block. For buttons 4, we're going to want to have it at 0, and then make a direct copy for button 5. We're going to want to open that up and change the constant from 0 to 1. And then that is all set up for our buttons. It is a button 4 for Celsius and buttons 5 for Fahrenheit, and you'll see when we get the visual up, we can switch between, it'll change your dial, and that's how that is set up. Alright, so our buttons for that screen are complete. Now we want to get to that screen. So it's going to go the full screen, quad screen, configuration screen. So we're going to need to have a link from the second screen to the third screen, so quad to config. So we're going to go into the configuration button handler, add a 4th one, and we're going to choose button 2 for that, and we're going to set it to config instead of full screen, which is displayed right there. We're going to head back up to the create just so we can have a visual for that button, and we want to change the button on button 2 from blank to a right arrow, so we know we're going to the right instead of just having a blank one. And then that is all set up, and I believe we are ready to do the actual conversion from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Alright, so the first thing we're going to want to do is get a subsystem. I'm going to name it tempcon for the temperature conversion, and we're going to need a head in there. Make sure we keep the ins and outs, get rid of the link between them. We're going to put some good stuff in between there. We're going to need a couple things: a constant, a gain, a sum block, a data read, and also a switch. So drag all those things in, and I'm going to speed it up while I drag all those things in. Now on to the serious part. We're going to need to do the math of the problem. So what we need to do is set the constant to 32, the gain to 9/5, and then connect those both up to the sum. But in the sum we need the output to be a single, so make sure you go into there and change it to a single. From there, once they're both connected up, what we're going to do is connect the sum to the top port of the switch, the data read to the middle port of the switch. We're going to want to name data read as temp units, because that's what we've been using for the temperature units. And then we're going to need to connect the in up to the bottom one. The in also connects up to the back of the gain, so it can either go either way depending on which way the switch is. And then finally the switch goes to the out, and then within the switch we're going to need U2 equals 0, and this is all set up. Now we're going to navigate back up a layer, and we're going to take the subsystem we just made and put it right in between the lower left and where it comes in. I'm going to make it blue just because I can, and the blue looks pretty nice. We're going to put that right there, fits in perfectly, and then that is our conversion. So when it goes from Celsius to Fahrenheit, that is how we do it. So I'm going to build this now, Control B, and I'm going to pause it while it builds, and we're going to see our result. Here's our lovely PC simulator. As you can see, the first and second screen should look familiar. We're going to navigate to the third screen, what we just made, and here it is. So you can press button 4 to have Celsius and button 5 to have Fahrenheit. So keep that in mind. It's just they line up because Celsius, Fahrenheit. So as you can see is 0 Celsius, and then we're gonna click the 5th button, Fahrenheit, go back over there, and there it is, 32 Fahrenheit, and there we go. So we're gonna open up our friend Raptor can just to check it, make sure it's working okay. So I have our status enabled, remember that, we have our can check. So open that up, if you have this, go to simulate, and what we're going to do is add our demo DBC that we have in our project. So navigate to your MATLAB project directory and get your demo DBC out, and make sure you press the play button to simulate. We're going to move the temperature up, and we're going to watch that dial move and switch it from Celsius to Fahrenheit and make sure it works, and that's how you switch from Celsius to Fahrenheit in a short amount of time. Thanks for watching another short tutorial on New Eagle's Raptor Dev. Hopefully you were successful in your configuration screen. Let us know, and for more information please visit www.neweagle.net.